of what is happening across the bar, from national news to community news. Speaking of national news, we will be getting an Ebola update from our regional correspondent later on. We'll also be having a sit down with one of those that are contending for the speakership race on the deputy level, Lydia Wanyoto. But also, as we come to you for the conversation of the day, we have gotten wind of information that Moses Karanga, who has been serving as the ANRM Karanga district chairperson and also doubling as the senior presidential advisor on special duties, has passed away after a fatal accident. May his soul rest in peace. The Kickstarter of the day does come to you, of course, exposing corruption. When you do have two dailies, case in point, so you do have the New Vision that is saying the rise and fall of Anita Among us, because homes and properties searched. The Daily Monitor, the Shield of Trinity cracks the rise and fall of Anita Among inside the search of Among homes. Why is it not nice for the president to be nice to you, and how political power has shifted? All this definitely has to bring us into the conversations that we must have. And that we must also have with our leaders, accountability and transparency. So exposing corruption and abuse of power is where we are definitely putting our debate. Does the new term signal accountability and political theater, or either of the two? Well, you can decide from where you're seated, but also the leaders that we'll be speaking to this morning will help us paint a better picture of either or. As the country is opening a new political chapter, corruption and abuse of power have once again taken the center stage, with recent reports from accountability institutions continuing to paint a troubling picture of financial mismanagement and impunity within public institutions. And interesting to note that these were the conversations that we were having here on this very show throughout the course of last week, especially from Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. And we were really trying to navigate the realities that we are seeing on ground, or people are seeing on ground, that for somewhat reason individuals have become stronger than the institutions that they're serving. And so at the center of public debate is the ongoing investigation involving the former Speaker of Parliament, a development that has reignited these questions about transparency, accountability, leadership at the highest levels of government. In this, we see a genuine turning point in confronting corruption, but some people are also questioning, could it be a politically convenient attempt to rebuild public trust at the start of a new term? So this morning on our Kickstarter, we definitely are examining the allegations, the implications, and the culture of impunity within Parliament and other arms of government, and whether Uganda is actually witnessing the dawn of a more accountable era, or merely another cycle of political symbolism. So joining me this morning is Mr. Brandon Chintu, politician, and of course belonging to the NRM. Later on, we'll also be joined by a legal practitioner, Ronald Chigonde, an expectedly Democratic Front politician and affiliate, Samuel Lubigamkaku, should also be joining us. But as we pick up the conversations of the day, of course, the news of the demise of Moses Karanga is definitely not one to be taken lightly, to which I turn to my first guest, Chintu. Good morning to you. And I know that we are having this conversation at a pivotal point, but also I know that you might have a message that you would want to say about the late Moses Karanga.
It's actually very good morning. It's very unfortunate, because as a Catholic, he's one of the greatest pillars in the Diocese of Jinja. He has been at the formation of the Diocese of Jinja. Besides him being the NRM chairperson of Kayunga, you cannot get him off the ties of Jinja. He's also into media, because he owns some media house in Jinja. He has employed, he's an employer, and a very great mobilizer, a father. So it's a pity, but from dust and to dust we return, RIP, and we pray for the family and the country at large, because he's a national figure, and the Catholic Church, that we have lost such a great figure.
May his soul rest in eternal peace. Now, on to the conversations of the day, the investigation of the legacy of the 11th Parliament, involving the former Speaker dominating the national headlines for the last 60 hours. And we just want to find out from you, especially one that has been close and working in the 11th Parliament, what exactly is under investigation?
Well, this is very public knowledge It's very unfortunate that when you have democracy and you have a country that is under the rule of law, sometimes you may think, do we really need this? Because there are some common evidences where you don't need any investigation. Well, this has been there before, but the beauty is that when you're investigating, you must have collective effort to justify your statements. Because there are so many scenarios that have happened in the 11th Parliament. I remember the exhibition, the service award. We have a lot of, you know, corruption expands. It may not be only financial, but also I would say there is some relationship corruption, how people are employed there, that's all corruption, the staff, the salaries, departments. So there's been a lot of pressure from the below, but being suffocated. You dare not say anything, because if you say anything, then you won't have peace at that building. So this has been a relief. The spark, especially the vehicle issue, that sparked everyone in economic crisis, people are out of election. I can tell you up to now, we haven't been paid salary at Parliament. We members of the 11th Parliament, because even you would say there's been illegal corruption as well, how we've been conducting business in the House, how some laws have been passed, the language that is used on the floor of Parliament. It's very unfortunate that the answer of the 11th Parliament would not be interesting to read. And it's a pity where a presiding officer says, this has been the most grateful of the Parliament. We have passed laws, but how and to what extent? So there's a lot of suffocation, a lot of intimidation. Actually, if you talk about democracy, that House did not have. People have been suffocated. From us, the MPs, and then the staff, the support staff, including the CEO, like the office of the clerk and anything. So this delayed, it took time, but you know, time tells. Probably other actors, the whistleblowers, were trying to gather information and bring it the most appropriate time.
What has emerged so far from what you hear in the corridors?
The vehicle that had actually illegal, I would say, in quotes, transferred from the Nakasero house to Chigo, because you would put questions, why? If you have your gift, why would you? So that's also an next bit. And then the amounts, the sums of money that we're seeing in all currencies. I think even currencies that may not be used in this country. So those big amounts of money, and we know what it means, the law, what it tells to keep a lot of money, both on your account and back home. We have just passed the sovereign bill, chaired by her, and we had the question of the foreign influence, policy, and financial. So you'd still put a question. This has been the presiding officer. Then you have this huge amount. So what would tell? Where is the sovereignty? Should we also start alleging there are some foreign actors and then some other gadgets? I am told, I don't know the name, but I was looking at your reporters also following, that there are some gadgets, some seals that are used somewhere in the operation of opening some safes from the Bank of Uganda. And Bank of Uganda was just raided recently. So you'd have relating now how even the governor, Bank of Uganda, the custodian is not allowed to have such, but they were found. When you look at still from the security, that I sit on the Committee of Defense and Internal Affairs in the 11th Parliament. You know, our Parliament gets dissolved on the 23rd at midnight. So we are told under investigation that even those police officers were retired, unknowing, without police authority, and the presiding officer made them to be private personnel. And then even the rifles, I have a gun licensed and the government can withdraw, but the gun that was found with the personal bodyguard, it's not even registered anywhere in the records of the gun. So these are quite suspicious, and some other items that were found. And then also the other question, when you look at a leader using government resources to enable himself herself. Let's look at the span of 4 years. You have 2 houses in Buyende, you have a mansion in Chigo, because this has been done within this time. When we came to Parliament, she was living in Tinda. Now there's this Nakasero coming up, there's one in Kauku, and so many others that we may not know. These could be the ones that are attracting the people's attention. And then also, Parliament and the office of the Speaker has been, I think, a commercial bank. And you find the Speaker having a money lending company. At the time, she stopped all those money lenders, saying you shouldn't come make reduction, because she completely wanted to own everything by herself. And then you have the office of the Speaker. The other day they called Right Honorable Karanga in that meeting on Thursday, tell us how he used to manage with the 4 billion, and here this person has 19 billion. You find a speaker that goes to a function and donates 100 million. Someone representing the president donates 20 million. So this has been, you would really put questions, all these things, and then you having this, and then there is a broken toilet, you have a commission, she's the chair of the commission, you don't have toilet paper in Parliament, but then somebody is going to donate 100 million. So all those really, they put it to a worry and questionable. So we have gathered this. Maybe you in the fourth estate, you have just, I believe you still know the inside, but you dare not speak. But us also, we know a lot, but we dare not speak.
And it's on that point that I really want to put you on the hot spot. Why not dare speak if you are there to ensure that our country is managed better, with more accountability and transparency? And these things have happened under the noses of the 11th Parliament. Why not the 11th Parliament dare speak? And this is where I'm coming from. This is the Parliament that had an impeachment of a minister and an MP, Persis Namuganza. If you could dare to impeach another, of course, on the orders of the Speaker of Parliament, you, that means, had the very power to impeach your own Speaker, given the things that were unfolding for you just within Parliament, without even us going outside the precinct.
I'll give you information, but I believe you know that every Parliament sets its rules and procedure. And just recently we amended the rules that entails and gives the Speaker a lot of power. Okay,
just so we get it, every Parliament has to set its own rules, or you can't do it. But there are already rules and procedures.
Yeah, but you keep on amending. I'll tell you now, like, previously I would go in my presidential shirt into Parliament. We amended, we said, no, we go back to the suits and let's forget about the traditional wear. We also have powers where actually a speaker is given a lot, you say presiding officer, even debating. And yet he or she is supposed to preside over. But this presiding officer is engaged. Now, when you have such a person, because our rules are very clear that when you raise on the procedure or on point of order, you can go to procedure. But then here you have where a speaker is extremely, you don't have that clause, because she will even clearly, he or she will tell you, I'm the custodian of the law. You cannot just wake up and say we impeach the speaker. So this entailed, is embedded in those amendments. So there, literally, you cannot do anything. And then also,
you cannot do anything, but there are still procedures that could then allow you to follow through with it.
But procedures.
Also, if you're able to touch the procedures of how Parliament operates, then you can also be able to touch procedures to bring out this nature of corruption.
But we have been having processes that are even within our rules. I'll give you an example where these MPs move the whole country looking for signatures to impeach the commissioners. Yeah. And where, what happened? We have a report of Kosase where a presiding officer said this did leak in the public, so we cannot discuss. And then they come up with, you know, there is a lot of meandering around the law. And this, it deprives the energies, especially with the members of Parliament. Remember, you also have what you would call, they are not justified law threats or statements. And then you have here a sack of people around the presiding officers who are, they will make sure that you get frustrated. So you simply get off from a legislative house to just a common house of probably a few people that are discussing managing a community. So however much you would put your energy, you would at one point get frustrated because it goes beyond what you see.
Okay.
You may even find a call coming from your wife. I mean, to us who are married people, you must be supportive. If you need to work, you should. It starts with the family. So if you get a phone call from your wife, so it goes out the legal sentiments that you may be the outside blame the people, you people. We have had powerful men there, and then they are silent. We have seen powerful men go kneel in front of the office of the presiding officers. So we take blame, all right, but we indeed thank God that this has come to burst, and we hope for the best of the 12th Parliament.
This is to say that you folded arms and allowed this to happen. As people that represent all of Uganda, 45.9 million Ugandans, what does that say of the character of the 11th Parliament?
We did not fold hands. We put resolutions. We have committees. We have made reports. We have sought for the order paper.
What are some of the reports that you made?
Yeah, let's look at the Kosase report. And then it was never given space on the order paper. They gave some administrative reasoning, and then it collapsed. But remember, these are stakeholders and people embedded in a lot of energy. It was never read on.
What did the Kosase report have to do with the conduct of the presiding officer?
Well, when you asked me generally the reports, so unless now you're specifically saying the conduct of the...
because what we're trying to establish here is that as the 11th Parliament, wielding that power that you have shown the people of Uganda, you can legislate over things in a split second. That means you wield the power to legislate over corruption right under or in your own house, which is what I'm asking is then, are there particular booked or documented steps that you took to try to deal with this thing in-house before it came out and blew up?
When you look at the powers that are embedded in the office of the Speaker, I don't think you would have... You have a right to strike, but I told you, once you suffocated, we have seen this with the leaders of opposition and the opposition people. They would demonstrate that by walking out, boycotting the sitting. They say, well, we don't agree with this, but that will be the privilege within the law. You walk out. But here, look, we have been in a tricky position, like the NRM. I've been the spokesperson of the NRM. We have to make sure we have business brought on the floor of Parliament. We have mobilized members, but we have also had members within the NRM that have been disagreeing. We have the Honorable Sechikubo, we have the Honorable Audrey, we have so many of them that in their capacity they have tried to show. But because of the environment, the suffocation around the environment, you echo out your voice, and then at the end of the day, you find the voices lower. You have seen these great men run around the whole country. But this was also on the conduct of the Speaker. You saw the Honorable Audrey saying, you two presiding officers have been impeached, your names. He was loud. And once a member speaks, that means, and he's my member of the NRM, that means the Parliament spoke. But we were requesting for space to discuss. It was never provided. So efforts were there, but still frustrated by the presiding officers.
On the party,
so the members of the party, members of the 11th Parliament did not fold. The echoes, the voices that you have been even playing, demanding for space. Because the only way you can do that is on the floor of Parliament. And who is in charge of managing the order paper is the office of the Speaker and the clerk. So, but we have done our best, and voices have been there.
If opposition could walk out on some of these sessions where you were in clear disagreement of case in point rule of procedures, why not the NRM also taking the position?
But I've given you an example of an NRM MP, Honorable Audrey, demanding for space. And he's a member of the party. You have seen Honorable Sechikubo, the conduct, because when you talk about the presiding officer, she is the chairperson of the commission. Honorable Sechikubo, Saro Pendi, these are members of the NRM. They were demanding for space to discuss the personality and under which circumstance was this man allocated to the members of the commission. And who is the head of the commission? Still the Speaker of Parliament. So voices have been across. And there was a lot of movements and spirits, signatures were collected, even within our own members of the NRM.
At the end of the day, this one person's act is painting and tainting the 11th Parliament, to which you belong, in a bad way. This controversy having hovering over your heads. What does this then speak of the character and legacy that the 11th Parliament is leaving behind?
Well, leaders come and leaders go, but leadership remains. And then you may have, we have had some inconsistencies, but we have also had some merits. So it's a two-way experience. We have learned, to those that will come to take over the House as presiding officer, that we should not make such mistakes. But then also, we have had moments where we've stood as parliament to protect the country. Because if you look at the 100-something bills we passed, that should be a credit. However, I know traditionally they say if you have done 100 things that are good and one spot that dents the rest, people look at this one spot. But the experience, whether it's negative or positive, it has been impacted and something that we should learn out. But I shouldn't chicken and put my head down that we've not done anything.
Protect the country versus protecting the institution that should be protecting the country. Right now, what do you advise be dealt with as the 12th Parliament is picking up this month on this stain?
First of all, this is a wide look, especially to the presiding officers and those colleagues that are getting in. We have seen a list. We have had some colleagues, members of parliament, who have enjoyed beyond what is expected. And now they know, they see how they are getting down. So first of all, we should, when you make an oath like they have just concluded, you have two books. You have the Constitution and the Rule of Procedure. So as they execute their mandate as the 12th Parliament, they should stick to the rules of procedure. How
do they then stick to the rules of procedures that you already altered to favor yourselves as the 11th Parliament in order to do the things that you did?
I told you every parliament, these rules can be amended. And from the look of the corridors, if that happens true, the incoming speaker is a custodian, a very legend lawman, a lawyer. So they can always amend. You can always amend and say this was not useful, let's stick to this. If the 11th Parliament diverted from the rules, we encourage the 12th Parliament to stick and also amend, because that's allowed to amend, because this is your working document. It's not static that it has to be like this and this. So it's your working document which should enable you to execute in the interest of Ugandans.
But also this should be a learning lesson for you as leaders, that you wielded the power to deal with this before, other stakeholders had to come in and do the job for you. What word of caution do you have to the incoming leaders that they have a responsibility to first hold themselves accountable before they can hold other people accountable?
But this is a people's parliament. Actually, we are Ugandans, and if you look at Article 1 of the Constitution, it says all power belongs to the people. If we are, and we are elected on the mandate of the people, if people that have elected you can check you, that's not an offense. Probably we were living in the comfort and people have checked us.
So you having elected your speaker, you should have been doing lots of checks.
There are measures when you should check a speaker. That's why we have working committees. And when we have committees, we do a lot of deliberation in committees, and we have a report to be presented. But sometimes you have been watching the language used, and then you don't have a privilege to rebut the speaker, because once the speaker has a microphone, the law is very clear, you don't say anything. If the speaker says you speak your nonsense, but you have also had some members retrieve saying, no, I'm speaking sense, which is not parliamentary. But in the end, that has happened. We shouldn't want to be coiling into it. There are lessons that are being learned, especially to those presiding officers. You have watched what has happened, and they should also remember that what goes around comes around.
All right, so on that note, how can investigative institutions maintain independence, fairness, and credibility throughout this process?
Well, issues of investigation, because these have also involved in, it's beyond corruption, embezzlement, then you see some security gadgets, then you see a communication system. So that's why it's called a joint one. So safety for the country is very paramount. I may not advise the security agencies, because a lot more, probably they will need to go to Biende, they may need to go to Bukedia, we don't know what. So it's too early for us to start indulging what we have to say, that we extremely be patient, and every day we get something new, and we get to know what kind of people we've been having, what kind of leaders. Probably would ask me the other way in my party, like how would we bring closer people to the leadership of the party without a proper background check. But for security, I think we give them time. We have just started, they are still recovering, and as a country, we await to see.
So outsiders were always questioning how fast such a leader could actually grow up the hierarchy of NRM, and you have made mention of it. I wonder what your defense is.
Well, NRM as a party is a democratic space, and parties are not clothes that you own a cloth. Sometimes you can even give out your cloth. And people defect from political parties. It doesn't really matter how long you stay, but it's also important that if you're developing a party, especially into high-ranking positions, you must do a background check. I want to tell you that just in the recent concluded elections, there are people opted for tickets of the parties, assuming I need to go to parliament. So in this area, which party that will make me go through? If it's NUP, I take that. But does this person understand the ideology of National Unity Platform? No. So there are some people that may want to emerge positions for their own selfish interest. Let's look at the just concluded elections of the Central Executive Committee. How the hit was, how people used a lot of effort, how people spoke so many words, how people used a lot of money. Now it's done. You don't even hear anything more. So some people have selfish interest. So in our parties, we must deal. Let's look at seniority, first of all. Let us have a vetting process that for you to contest at a specific position, you must have done ABCD for the party. Because this embarrasses the party, that we have number 3 in the party, and it is such a scandal, and yet more, it's embarrassing. It even deprives the trust of the party. Now let's look at, I will give you an example now, PRU versus NRM. You see that we're going to reach an extent that what PRU tells us as the NRM is what we follow. Because PRU seems to be very certain now and properly constituted to influence the party. Even
though it's just a political pressure group, as it's being categorized instead of a political party.
This now is showing you that PRU is actually a check war. It's checking that you people are doing. If you do analysis, we are profiling the NRM members of parliament. About 270 NRM, the new members of parliament, they are PRU. So that means now PRU is already saying that there should be something rotten here in the NRM. We need to take charge. So this is a challenge and a message to us, the NRM, that we should have a background check. We should have parameters on how this person gets.
Which is something that you have already lost, because now that should have been done before elections, but now elections are done and dusted. And looking at the NRM party itself, internally you had very rough and bloody elections within the party in order to get and give up, tickets to flag bearers. And then later on we get to see those who are dissatisfied coming out and challenging your flag bearers as independents. And those independents are now in the House. So that already means that as NRM, you're already having, a substandard of leadership representing the people in the 12th Parliament, which then may not be different in terms of behavior and, service delivery to the people.
It's never late, and that's why we had that induction of the 9 days or 10 days of Chankwanzi.
9 days, 10 days is not enough to cater for 5 years of people.
No, this is an ongoing process. In the previous parliament, the outgoing parliament, we always had a caucus every first Friday of the month. This is still an ongoing formation that we reflect as members of the NRM, and slightly, and I told you in my earlier submission that some people attained these party cards because they need to occupy this office.
And caucus is primarily about party position on what is being debated in parliament, not quality of leadership that you already have in the caucus.
You can learn on job. I'm not a communicator. I'm not saying I'm the best, but when I was elected a spokesperson, every day I learn. Even when I have a conversation with you, I learn. So it's a learning process. As you learn, of course, why are you elected as a member of parliament? To deal with government business, legislation. If you did not attain, remember most of these MPs, some of us, including myself, probably maybe we've been councillors. You may get some people who have been just spokespersons of the functions in the villages. So they need to be uplifted. So if you are having information of the job you're doing, learning on job is the best. You may find that in the second year, in the third year, in the second year of parliament, especially now that my colleagues who are going in the 12th parliament do not have any interaction. We came into COVID. If this person is dedicated, believe me, you will be able to cope up.
What constitutional principles are at stake with this picture right now?
Well, it's quite interesting, but still I would still say let's for now watch the space, because I don't want to read that this is at stake, because we are still in the process, which is still ongoing. And constitutionality. But
this process has been ongoing. It has just been curbed now. But you know, when we reflect to what you have been telling us, especially with you know, the tongue being twisted or the mouth being closed for the 11th Parliament, those are principles at stake. People not being able to have the liberty to voice, to question, to verify, to.
When you take an oath and you shall protect and defend the Constitution, and then at the end of the day, some other rights are encroached on in the Constitution, of course those are there. But then we should look at how do we resolve. And I've given an assurance that if what I hear, me and you in the corridors, that the Right Honourable to be, or both, because this being a legit man, he has been a chair of legal, he has. I've been happy to serve as a member of defense, where he's been actually rightful from state minister and then a full minister of defense. So we hope that these texts that are in constitution will be uplifted, and then people have a right of voice and choices to deliberate and bring back the glory in that house.
How can the Parliament then recalibrate to bring back accountability and transparency internally?
One, we have accountability committees, which are about 4. You know, a committee in Parliament has the same powers of the High Court. Now, the committee powers in the 11th Parliament, they were extremely suffocated. You find a line committee, and then the presiding officer puts on a hardcore committee.
And the suffocation you're referring to is by the presiding officer?
Yeah. If there is a committee already, there is an issue, and then the presiding officer says, okay, now I put a hardcore committee. But we have a committee that can handle the issue. So you have a committee that is rendered redundant. And then these are the same names that are appearing. These hard committees have been there. You've been watching them. The speaker says, okay, now in line, I'm going to put a hardcore, and the chair, next session, I'll bring the names and the same names. So these committees are made redundant. In terms of administration, we have clerks. Every committee has a clerk who is in charge of the running of the programs. When you're running, it has an effect of budget. But here you see that a committee, 3 days to allocation, the money is finished before even the quarter is in the middle. And then the committee doesn't do anything. So that independence is taken, the effectiveness is taken, and then people start running to, if you want, like I was on the committee of equal opportunities. So I told my chair, we need to go out there, the inland benchmark, and look at equity, especially with this district. And the chair, the leadership says, we don't have money, but we have allocated it. Where did the money go? Please don't ask me, ask the Speaker's office. So if we want to restore that, the committee should regain their independence, like what we read from the previous parliaments. And they should be able, the clerk of the committee, to exercise the right. Let the committees be independently manage their budget and execute their duties. Well,
you're definitely handing over a hard baton to the 12th Parliament.
Yeah, it should actually. It should, to clear out the mess. They shouldn't be in the mess that we have been in. I'm not ashamed to talk about that.
What other reforms do you recommend they must pay attention to in order to clean house?
The other thing also, like, of course, what you have to do to execute your rules, I mean your roles as a member of Parliament, is to follow the rules. It's just this binding document in everything. You have seen the Honourable Semju each time is on the floor, he's quoting the rules. And they should be able to execute their mandate independently. I think now this would be to the presiding officer, that the presiding officer should not manipulate members, like putting them in a position of bootlicking them. Like you there, let the members have the entitlement. I want to tell you, we're entitled to go for benchmark, but there are some members of the 11th Parliament that have never even crossed to Entebbe. but we have these faces. So these people are disgruntled. So the presiding officer should put a working letters, because they are going to be elected. Now you're not going to have masters. How should I fear somebody that I casted my vote? You can't even go and express, you can't be free. We have seen people kneeling down in the offices of the presiding officer.
Okay. Brandon, as we end this conversation, what's your word to caution to the different stakeholders, especially in regards to rebuilding public trust towards the Legislative House?
First of all, that everyone that's given a mandate, let us execute following the Constitution and following the law. And let us also be, like now Parliament is an arm of government, we should also know the separation of powers. What does the executive do, the judicial and the legislature? And also, I think most important, we should be Ugandans, because at the end of the day, you are Ugandan.
Thank you so much, Brandon Chintu, and your voice and opinions being regarded here on Morning at NTV, looking into the deepening corruption, especially in the